When a billionaire CEO challenged a homeless black man to fly her private helicopter as a cruel joke, the crowd laughed until he climbed into the cockpit and powered it on with flawless precision. Cameras froze. Her laughter died. Because what no one knew was that this man, dressed in rags and living under a bridge, had once been one of the Air Force's most decorated pilots, until life, loss, and discrimination stripped everything from him. That day, as the rotors roared back to life, the world would learn that power isn't measured by wealth, but by the courage to rise when everyone else writes you off. Before we uncover who this man really was and how his past would shake the foundation of her entire company, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Every week we bring you powerful stories that expose hidden truths, challenge prejudice, and prove that greatness can rise from the most unexpected places. Now, let's rewind to the moment that led a billionaire CEO to mock a man she should have never underestimated. The rooftop helipad shimmered under the morning sun, reflecting the skyline of one of the richest cities in America. It was a day of celebration for Amira Crosswell, the CEO of one of the world's leading tech aviation companies. Cameras flashed, investors gathered, and reporters waited for her latest publicity stunt, a challenge designed to promote her new line of luxury helicopters. The rule was simple. Anyone who could fly her newest prototype would win a lifetime job contract and $1 million bonus. No one expected anyone to succeed. Down below in the shadows of that same building, a man named Daniel sat quietly near the service entrance, his clothes torn, his beard unkempt, his eyes carrying the weight of battles long forgotten by the world. He was homeless, known only as the Drifter, who sometimes helped parking attendants with heavy work in exchange for leftover food. But when he heard Amira's announcement echoing through the plaza speakers, something deep within him stirred. The word chopper, it wasn't just metal and engines to him. It was a memory, a heartbeat. Security laughed when he approached the rooftop later that afternoon. Cameras followed him as Amira smirked, her voice dripping with arrogance. "Fly this chopper," she said mockingly, "and I'll marry you myself." The crowd erupted with laughter. To them, he was a joke, a spectacle. But what they didn't see was the calm in his hands, the steady breath of a man who had once flown through enemy skies. As the mockery grew louder, Daniel stepped closer to the helicopter. The smell of jet fuel hit him like a wave of nostalgia. The switches, the levers, the rhythm. It all came back like a song his soul never forgot. Daniel's fingers brushed over the helicopter's control panel, his touch gentle yet precise, like a pianist returning to his long-lost instrument. The crowd's laughter dimmed as the man they'd dismissed as worthless moved with the grace of someone born to command the skies. Amira crossed her arms, still smirking, though unease flickered in her eyes. "Careful," she called out sarcastically. "Wouldn't want you to break it." But Daniel didn't flinch. He simply scanned the cockpit, noting the latest technology, the improved stabilizer systems, the redesigned throttle. All innovations he'd once helped pioneer before the world decided he no longer belonged. Years earlier, Daniel had been Captain Daniel Morris of the U.S. Air Force, a top-tier pilot and aeronautical engineer. He had led missions across war zones and designed aircraft modifications still used today. But one mistake, one racialized accusation, had cost him everything. After being blamed for an accident caused by faulty equipment, he was dishonorably discharged. His patents stolen, his reputation destroyed, Daniel vanished from the system. The same world that once celebrated him now looked away when he passed by, hungry and homeless. Now, standing before the gleaming helicopter, he could feel all those years folding into this one moment. He toggled the ignition switch, adjusted the cyclic, and the machine came alive with a deep mechanical hum. The crowd gasped as the rotors began to spin. Amira's amusement turned into disbelief. "Wait, he can actually start it?" whispered one of her engineers. Daniel's movements were fluid, his instincts perfect. Every motion revealed not hesitation, but mastery. For the first time, silence overtook the rooftop. The laughter stopped, replaced by the thunder of blades cutting through the air. Daniel didn't lift off. He didn't need to. His control alone told a story louder than any flight could. He began explaining the modifications she'd made, how they improved fuel efficiency but weakened stability in crosswinds, how the torque balance could fail under stress. His words were surgical, brilliant, irrefutable. The engineers looked stunned. He knew more about the aircraft than the people who built it. Amira's face tightened. What began as mockery now felt like humiliation. This man she'd dismissed as a beggar was exposing flaws in her flagship model before cameras, investors, and journalists. Her PR stunt was collapsing in real time. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice cracking beneath the noise of the blades. Daniel looked at her, calm and steady. "Someone who used to build these," he said quietly. He shut down the engine and the rotors slowed. The silence that followed was heavier than the roar had been. Reporters whispered, recording every moment. Somewhere in the crowd, someone searched his name, and when the truth appeared, screens lit up like fire. The world was about to learn who the homeless man really was. As the news spread, the rooftop turned into a storm of flashing cameras and gasps of disbelief. Daniel Morris, the name alone carried weight. Once one of the most promising minds in aviation, now standing there in worn-out clothes, a living symbol of how brilliance could be buried under prejudice. The headlines erupted online before the event even ended. Black Air Force engineer wrongfully discharged, found homeless, outsmarts billionaire CEO. Every whisper, every flash, every stunned glance was directed at Amira now. Her confident poise began to crumble. Daniel didn't gloat. He stood still, watching the chaos swirl, a quiet storm of dignity. He'd carried years of humiliation in silence, and now truth itself was his vindication. Amira's investors began pulling her aside, their faces pale with concern. The engineers who once laughed at Daniel now avoided his gaze. The same people who dismissed him were now desperate to prove they'd never meant harm. But it was too late. The internet had already crowned him a symbol, a story that spoke to every overlooked genius, every soul crushed under the weight of racism and arrogance. A live stream captured Daniel walking away as security and journalists swarmed him. Yet before he reached the exit, Amira's voice broke through the noise. "Wait," she said, trembling. "You were Captain Morris?" He turned. "Was," he replied softly, "until people like you made sure I'd never be again." His tone wasn't angry, it was weary, the voice of a man who had already fought the battle long before she ever mocked him. Amira's expression faltered, her arrogance dissolving into shame. She realized this wasn't just a story about her mistake, it was a mirror held up to everything she represented. Then, with the world watching, Daniel climbed back into the helicopter. The rotors roared once more, the sound now a declaration rather than a test. The air whipped around him as he took off, steady, fearless, magnificent. The cameras caught it all. The black man they called homeless, soaring above those who'd buried his name. When Daniel landed the chopper at a nearby airfield, the world had already rewritten his story. Within hours, media outlets, pilots, and aviation experts flooded the internet with his records. Former Air Force captain, lead engineer in rescue tech innovations, and a man who once saved 27 lives during a combat evacuation. The same city that had turned its back on him now searched for his face, his interviews, his truth. Strangers who once ignored him on the streets now called him a hero. But Daniel didn't celebrate. For him, this wasn't revenge, it was revelation. Meanwhile, Amira's empire began to shake. Investors backed out, sponsors withdrew, and her reputation as an innovator turned into an example of corporate arrogance. The viral video of her laughing at Daniel, followed by the reveal of his past, became a global symbol of poetic justice. Her PR team released apologies. Her advisors begged her to speak, but words couldn't fix what the world had already judged. The clip was everywhere, paired with one haunting caption, "He had nothing but still flew higher than her pride." Weeks later, Daniel quietly accepted a government position, heading an aviation program for underprivileged youth. His goal wasn't to prove anyone wrong anymore. It was to lift others who'd been buried by the same kind of injustice he had endured. Cameras caught him teaching children how to build small drone models, smiling, focused, alive again. As for Amira, she appeared once at a charity event, silent, pale, and visibly changed. She didn't speak to the press, but she donated millions to programs supporting homeless veterans and minority engineers. It was her quiet way of atonement, a recognition that power meant nothing without respect. The world eventually moved on, but Daniel's flight remained an unforgettable reminder. A reminder that dignity doesn't wear designer suits, and brilliance doesn't fade just because society refuses to see it. So next time someone mocks a person who seems less, remember, behind every broken coat, every tired face, may lie a story of greatness buried beneath prejudice. Because sometimes the wings we underestimate are the ones that fly the highest.